mentioned kind of the addiction piece to that came into your picture, right?
Yeah.
And I think it'd be like, what would you say, like, you found yourself in that process being? Like, when you found yourself struggling with addiction, like, did you feel that you were um, not necessarily untouchable in that facet, but like, what really resorted you to kind of go into that route and then realize what that did to you ultimately?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think it's a result of decisions that I started to make in high school that were beginning to maximize themselves and show up in worse ways. And so, um, like I started to smoke weed in high school, and that didn't seem like an issue because my identity is in baseball, and I'm having success on the baseball field. And this thing over here that's going on in my life that I know is wrong because I've been raised with the difference of right and wrong, and I had great parents growing up, um, and I make those decisions because everything's going good over here and my identity's in baseball. And so it wasn't an issue until I get into pro ball. And, you know, I'm continuing to smoke weed. Now I'm getting drug tested. Now I'm failing drug tests. Um, and I'm starting to realize that there's a problem with the decisions that I'm making. And, and for younger guys that were are maybe in the position that I was in, or maybe in a college program somewhere, I would say that like the decisions that we make today are the future that we're going to live tomorrow. And those decisions that we have create momentum in our lives. And the momentum that was carrying me from high school into pro ball was leading me down a destructive path. And by the time that I started to recognize that, um, it was difficult because I hadn't surrounded myself with positive influences. Uh, I hadn't considered who I am, like what's my character, what do I stand for, apart from just being good at throwing a ball over my head. Like what is my value as a human being? And so then you mix in the failure of early pro ball experiences, and you know, then you fail drug tests, and you start to realize that there's an issue, but now you've kind of gone too far and you've built up some guilt and some shame, and the momentum is just leading you further and further away from who you want to be, uh, even even though the Kansas City Royals did everything they could to try to help you, you know. Um, so I would just encourage young guys to surround yourself with positive influences, and consider the decisions that you're making today and how they'll affect the future that you're going to live tomorrow. Because we're so much more than just baseball players, you
Right.
know. Like we're sons, we're friends, um, you know, we have innate value as human beings apart from just throwing a ball over our head.
Right, absolutely. And I think that there is like that balance between the two, right? And it's almost like we get lost in those things, and it's almost like the dopamine effect. Call it what it is.
Mm,
I would just call it the escape from like what reality is,
that's
and
right.
especially I think when you're young and you have like all of this momentum, like you alluded to, going your way, to then like experiencing failure in a way that is so escalated. Like you just said, third rounder, you know, having expectations of, you know, progressing through the organization to then make the big leagues at a high clip. And you're like, shoot, I'm failing like
Mm,
right now bad. Not only from me personally and from a performance side to then expectation to then having this escape where I know that it's wrong, but it's giving me an escape from what the reality is. And I think like uh, what would you say? And I think that, like you alluded to, is like giving the advice to the next generation. Like,
mm,
what are some strategies that you found once you, let's call it what it is, like rock bottom, right?
mm,
Like when you choose that route, how to pull out of that? Because you could have done two things. You could have easily fallen in the trap and just said like, you know, when the Royals kind of basically parted ways with you, right? You could have easily hung it up and then kept going down that path,
mm,
but you didn't, right? What are some strategies or solutions that you took that you think could help in terms of like guys at this struggle? Because it's going to happen.
yeah.
Gambling, drug addiction, spending money. Like another good one is like spending money on like others, right? And
Right.
go down that spiral effect.
Yeah.
What would you say the best like strategy that you implemented to then what you could have done better in that
Right.
situation?
Well, I think what I could have done better is you know, work to change the first time, because the Royals released me in 2015, and I did continue to spiral, and it did get a lot worse because of the momentum that was created, and the weed did turn into opiates and then eventually heroin, and I did eventually spend $500,000 in 3 years on an addiction to heroin and the lifestyle that comes with it, and uh, and what I would say is that guys don't have to wait for it to get that bad. Not that I think everybody out there is going to go do heroin. Like, I think that was just uh, a result of the situation of my life and the decisions that I made. Like, that's not what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is that, um, like, it can get worse. Like, although there's not consequences today, like, that you can't live in the dark forever. And so, but ultimately, it did take me reaching rock bottom. And and that would be my advice, is like, don't let it be rock bottom that opens your eyes, and lets you consider, like, kind of the things that we do on a daily basis that we know we might be better off without, or that we know aren't helping us in our baseball career, but we continue to do them um, because we're just trying to cope with this life. Like, surround yourself with your team, with your family, with the people that God has put in your life to encourage you and support you, and recognize your value as a human being, apart from the game of baseball. Uh, and I think that would be helpful, if that answers your question
Yeah,
at
yeah,
all.
and
Yeah.
I think it's just like important to like, label that, right? It's like I did get there, and you know, with that, there was a light bulb moment, right, for you.
Yeah.
What would you say that light bulb moment was?
That light bulb moment for me, and I say it laughing now, it's not funny at all, but the light bulb moment was when I fell asleep at the wheel going 75 miles an hour on the highway, high on heroin and Xanax. That was the light bulb moment for me. And thank God, like, I wasn't hurt, or the people that I was with weren't hurt. But that was the moment that I knew that, like, something needed to change, and I couldn't live like that anymore. And and that's where, redemption started to take place, and I started to lean into, you know my identity as a son of God, and and kind of start praying and seeking divine help, and putting myself around people that would lead me in the right direction, and so that was January 1st of 2017, that my life totally, um, turned around, thankfully. Um, but it was the light bulb moment was a um, pretty rough situation,
Right.
Um,
100%.
yeah,
I think, a common theme with just like the stories that I've heard and then like hearing you kind of talk about it is it's almost like there has to be like an admittance phase to it of like I have an issue, whether
mm,
it's to that extreme or not, of
totally,
like mental battles, to then like how you're taking care of yourself off the field, like on the micro level, which is like what majority would experience, right? And then it can go to the extreme. I think it deals with a lot with like admittance and then being able to ask for help, right? You're
that's right,
mentioning, turning to God and like however anyone chooses to do that is like being able to say like, shoot, like I'm doing this to myself, like I need help,
right,
right? I need help.
yeah. And
Um,
that's tough for men. That's tough for baseball players. That's tough for athletes. It's tough for people that grow up in a culture that says, if it's gonna be, then it's up to me. and I can figure this thing out. I don't need help. I don't need your advice. I don't need, and there's some humility that comes in that, that says like, maybe I don't have this whole thing figured out, and maybe somebody has a word of encouragement or support that would help me lead a better life, or at least a more free life, you know.
Right.